In the hushed dawn of 1816, a secret stirred within England's heart. Was it love, long lost and now yearning to return? Or merely the echo of a past that refused to stay buried? The grand ballroom of Grey Haven Estate awaited, a constellation of candles poised to witness a story of healing and second chances. A tale far deeper than whispered rumors, a journey to mend what was broken, but could 5 seconds reveal the truth? Lady Catherine Petton, a vision in pale blue silk, moved through the glittering throng. A year had passed since Edmund Ashford, the Duke of Silvermere, vanished from her world, leaving behind a wound she thought would never heal. Tonight, the annual spring ball at Lady Rathel's promised a distraction, a chance to showcase her newfound strength. But fate, cruel and mischievous, had other plans. The music swelled, a familiar Mozart piece, as Catherine accepted a glass of champagne, her practiced smile masking a heart still fragile. Mr. James Howard, kind and ever-present, offered his hand for a dance, a gesture of comfort in recent months. As they moved across the floor, Catherine felt a surge of quiet pride, a testament to her survival. But the music faltered, or perhaps it was her perception. A hush fell over the ballroom, whispers swirling like secrets. And then, he arrived. Edmund stood tall in the entryway, impeccable in dark attire, the Duchess of Harrington, radiant in crimson and diamonds, on his arm. Catherine's fingers tightened around Mr. Howard's hand, her expression unwavering, but her carefully constructed defenses threatened to crumble. Their eyes met across the crowded room, the world around them fading into a blur. For one breathless moment, there was only the two of them. A flash of pain, of regret, flickered across Edmund's aristocratic face, and Catherine, with every ounce of dignity, turned away. A new dance, a new smile, a pretense of indifference, but her traitorous heart thundered in her chest. Edmund, rooted to the spot, watched Catherine, the Duchess's words lost to him. She was different, more poised, more confident. The light in her eyes, once solely for him, now directed at others, a blow that struck him physically. Lord Rathel's casual words about Catherine and Mr. Howard sent a surge of darkness through his veins. Across the room, Catherine's younger sister, Lady Helena Petton, whispered urgently about Edmund's gaze. But Catherine's voice was still wrapped in silk. As the evening progressed, Catherine and Edmund orbited each other, acutely aware of the other's presence. The Duchess, with calculated grace, steered Edmund towards Catherine, a possessive hand on his arm, a deliberate display of intimacy. Edmund's deep voice sent an unwelcome shiver down Catherine's spine. As James and Edmund exchanged pleasantries, Helena whispered in Catherine's ear, but Catherine felt as though she might shatter, the proximity to Edmund threatening to unravel her composure. Seeking refuge, she fled to the terrace. The cool night air was a blessed relief, a whisper of healing against her burning cheeks. Catherine, Edmund's voice, a year of silence broken, pierced the night. He needed to speak with her. A moment, that's all he asked. In the moonlight, his features seemed more pronounced, tired, strained. After weeks of courtship, he abandoned her without a word, and now he wanted to inquire after her well-being? He knew he had no right to ask, but he had thought of her often. She, however, had endeavored not to think of him at all. He flinched as if struck. The Duchess appeared a suitable match for him. He had abandoned her after weeks of courtship. Edmund gently caught her wrist. The touch, their first in a year, sent a jolt through them both. He had made a terrible mistake. With that, she pulled away, leaving Edmund alone in the darkness with his regrets. The day after Lady Rathel's ball, Helena read aloud from the latest society column. Catherine's encounter with the Duke provided delicious fodder for gossip. A delivery arrived, a small package wrapped in brown paper, accompanied by a note. Edmund's handwriting, elegant, decisive strokes that had once adorned love letters. The note said words could not express his regret. Inside was a small leather-bound volume of Wordsworth's poetry, the same collection they had discussed during their walks in Hyde Park. How terribly romantic. Would she see him? Certainly not. A paltry gift changes nothing. That afternoon, Mr. James Howard paid a visit. Over these past months, he had developed a deep admiration for her grace, her intelligence, her resilience. He wanted to earn her affection. Catherine regarded him with genuine fondness. James Howard was everything Edmund was not: steady, transparent, uncomplicated. A sensible woman would accept his suit without hesitation. But she could not in good conscience encourage hopes she was uncertain she could fulfill. Touched by his maturity, she said they shall continue as friends, and perhaps with time. As he took his leave, Catherine felt a complex mixture of emotions. James offered safety, respect, affection. Why then did the prospect of accepting him fill her with such melancholy? Later that evening, the Earl of Willor summoned Catherine to his study. The Duke of Silvermere requested a private audience, an unusual circumstance. He asked for my permission to court you properly. The Earl reminded him that he had forfeited any claim to her attention when he disappeared without explanation, that Mr. Howard has shown serious interest in her. The Earl cautioned her against trusting Silvermere again. The Earl said he would not rest until he had explained himself to her fully, that he had mentioned circumstances beyond his control. The following evening at the Forsytes' musical, Catherine was acutely aware of being the subject of curious glances. Edmund had entered the music room, alone this time, his tall figure commanding attention. He stood apart from the other guests, his posture tense, his gaze occasionally seeking hers across the room. After the performance, Catherine found herself cornered by the Duchess of Harrington, who said he seems rather distracted of late, since Lady Rothwell's ball. In fact, Edmund and she had an understanding. He may be experiencing some nostalgia regarding their previous acquaintance, but she assured her it was nothing more. Before Catherine could respond, a deep voice interrupted. Edmund's tone suggested he believed otherwise. Edmund said he believed her sister was looking for her, and then requested a moment alone with Catherine in the library. Elizabeth can be forceful when she feels challenged. There is no understanding. Elizabeth has chosen to interpret certain courtesies as more meaningful than they are. I visited your father yesterday. He knew he had no right to ask for a second chance, but he must explain what happened last year. When he left, it was not because he didn't care for her. It was because he cared too much. He had received devastating news that made him believe he had no right to pursue her. He couldn't tell her. Not yet. He swore he left to protect her, not to hurt her. The door opened fully, revealing James Howard. Ah, there you are, Lady Catherine. Your sister was concerned about your absence. He said he had a prior engagement tomorrow, but she will be walking in Hyde Park the day after at 11 o'clock. If he wished to speak further, he may find her there. The morning dawned clear and crisp as Catherine prepared for her walk in Hyde Park. She had spent a restless night debating the wisdom of meeting Edmund, but curiosity and perhaps something deeper had won out. Father would not approve of her meeting him unchaperoned. The same Edmund who abandoned you without explanation? She simply wanted answers. But as she entered the park and saw Edmund waiting by the ornamental lake, Catherine was forced to acknowledge that her feelings were far more complicated than a simple desire for closure. He stood tall and straight without the usual trappings of his status. No valet, no fine carriage waiting nearby. He had came. She said she would keep her promises. Shall they walk? They strolled in silence for several. A secret whispered on the wind, a truth hidden in plain sight. What if everything you believed was a carefully constructed lie? Minutes dissolved like sand as they traced the gravel path, the lake mirroring secrets yet untold. At long last, Edmund's voice broke the silence. Catherine, do you recall our first encounter at Lady Winchester's dinner? A barely perceptible nod was her response. You were seated beside me, yet remained almost entirely silent. I confess I found you unbearably proud. A ghost of a smile played on his lips, a warmth radiating from his soul. The truth, Catherine, is that I was petrified. Your beauty, your poise, left me utterly speechless. I couldn't conjure a single coherent thought. You eventually found your voice? Catherine observed, a hint of playful accusation in her tone. Particularly during our walks. Edmund's voice dropped, a whisper of yearning. Those were the happiest moments of my life. Catherine stopped, her heart pounding. Then why, Edmund? Why did you leave? This time, he would share the truth, unburdened by past choices. He gazed across the water, gathering the courage to reveal the depths of his sacrifice. It began with a letter from Richard Phillips, my former ward. Surprise flickered across Catherine's face. I was unaware you had a ward, Edmund explained. He is the son of my late cousin. I became his guardian when he was 12, following his parents' tragic accident. And where is he now? Catherine inquired. Cambridge. He is nearly finished with his studies. Edmund's expression clouded, a darkness creeping in. Richard's letter contained disturbing information regarding Victor Harrove, a businessman with whom my father had extensive dealings prior to his death. Catherine frowned, confusion knitting her brows. I fail to see how this concerns us. Edmund's tone turned grim, a storm gathering in his eyes. Concerns everything. Richard uncovered evidence suggesting that Harrove had systematically defrauded my father for years. But far worse, there was a suggestion that Harrove may have been implicated in my father's death. Catherine gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Your father's riding accident? But that was a decade ago. Yes. Edmund's voice was tight with restrained fury. The official ruling was misadventure. His horse was spooked, throwing him. However, Richard unearthed correspondence indicating that my father had confronted Harrove about financial discrepancies just days before his death. Edmund, this is horrifying, Catherine exclaimed, genuine concern melting her reserve. But why didn't you confide in me? He turned, meeting her gaze directly. Because of who Victor Harrove is. He is the Duchess of Harrington's uncle and her financial advisor. Catherine's eyes widened as understanding dawned, each piece of the puzzle falling into place. So, your sudden interest in Elizabeth was not genuine affection, but a calculated investigation. Edmund spoke firmly. It was investigation. I needed to get close enough to ascertain whether she was involved in her uncle's machinations. And is she? Catherine probed. Edmund hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. I believe not. Elizabeth is ambitious and calculating, but I discovered no evidence directly linking her to Harrove's crimes. Catherine absorbed this, her mind racing. But why cut me off completely? Why not simply share the truth? Because Harrove is dangerous. Edmund's voice dropped to a near whisper. When I began investigating his affairs, there was an incident, a warning. My carriage was deliberately forced off the road on my return from Silvermere Court. My driver was injured, though I escaped unharmed. Catherine's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. Heavens, you could have been killed. Edmund's expression remained grim. Indeed, the message was clear. Harrove was aware of my investigation and would stop at nothing to prevent it. So, you pushed me away to protect me, Catherine murmured, realization spreading through her. I couldn't bear the thought of you being harmed because of me, Edmund said fervently. His eyes filled with a desperate plea for understanding. If Harrove had learned of my feelings for you, you would have become a target. I believed it would be better for you to hate me than to be in danger. Catherine fell silent, absorbing the weight of his words. You had no right to make that decision for me. I know, Edmund admitted, his voice thick with regret. It was arrogant, misguided. But I was terrified, Catherine. Not for myself, but for you. And now? Why reveal all this now? Because it is over, Edmund declared, a note of quiet triumph in his voice. 3 weeks ago, Harrove was apprehended for fraud and embezzlement. Richard and I provided the authorities with irrefutable evidence of his crimes. He is currently awaiting trial with no possibility of bail. And the suspicions surrounding your father's death? Edmund's face darkened once more. Still unproven, unfortunately. But Harrove will spend the remainder of his days in prison for his financial crimes, at the very least. Catherine digested this, piecing together the final fragments. So, your courtship of the Duchess, a necessary deception to gain access to her household and potentially to her uncle's papers. Edmund confirmed. Not my proudest moment, but effective. Does she suspect that you used your connection to investigate her uncle? Not explicitly, though I suspect she has realized it by now, Edmund replied with a wry twist of his lips. Elizabeth is many things, but she is not a fool. They resumed their walk, their pace slower, more contemplative. I understand your reasoning, Catherine said at last, but I cannot erase the pain of your abandonment. For a year, I believed I meant nothing to you. You meant everything? Edmund insisted, his voice filled with raw emotion. You still do. Every day away from you was agony. But I would endure it again if it meant ensuring your safety. Catherine stopped once more, turning to face him fully. I admire your dedication to Richard, and your pursuit of justice for your father. But Edmund, can't you see? Your fundamental mistake was not trusting me with the truth. You made decisions about my life, about us, without granting me any agency in the matter. Edmund's shoulders slumped slightly, the truth of her words landing heavily. You are right. I was so consumed by protecting you physically that I failed to consider the emotional devastation I was causing. It was unconscionable. Yes, Catherine agreed, her voice firm. It was. Can you ever forgive me? He pleaded, his voice thick with emotion. Catherine looked into his eyes, seeing the anguish mirrored there, the genuine remorse etched on his face. Forgiveness may be possible, she said carefully, but trust is far harder to rebuild. A glimmer of hope ignited in Edmund's eyes. Then you will allow me to try? I make no promises, Catherine warned, and if you ever deceive me again, for any reason, even with the noblest intentions, we will be finished. Permanently. I understand, Edmund said solemnly. Complete honesty always. As they continued their stroll, a comfortable silence settled between them. It was not the easy intimacy they had once known, but no longer the tense animosity of recent days. When they reached the park gates, Edmund asked, Will you be attending Lady Sinclair's dinner tomorrow evening? Yes, Catherine replied. Helena is particularly looking forward to it. Then perhaps I might call on you beforehand? There is something I wish to show you. Documents that corroborate my story. Catherine hesitated, then nodded. Very well, 3 o'clock. As Catherine returned home, her mind swirled with conflicting emotions. Edmund's explanation shed light on his inexplicable behavior, but the wound of his abandonment had cut deep. Could she truly trust him again? Her contemplation was interrupted by the discovery that James Howard awaited her in the drawing room. Mr. Howard, she greeted him with genuine warmth, tinged with unease. This is unexpected. James rose, bowing slightly. Forgive the intrusion. I was passing and wondered if you would honor me with your presence at the Sinclair dinner tomorrow. Catherine's conscience pricked her. James had been nothing but kind and attentive during her heartbreak. He deserved honesty. Mr. Howard James, she began gently, I must be forthright with you. The Duke of Silvermere has clarified certain circumstances that complicate matters. James's expression clouded slightly, but he maintained his composure. I understand. May I inquire if these explanations have altered your feelings toward him? I am not entirely certain, Catherine admitted. The situation is complex. James nodded slowly. I appreciate your candor, Lady Catherine. Know that my regard for you remains unchanged. Should you determine that the Duke's explanations are insufficient, I hope you will remember that not all men are so inconstant in their affections. His quiet dignity moved Catherine deeply. You are a good man, James Howard. Any woman would be fortunate to receive your attentions. Following James' departure, Catherine sought out her father in his study, engrossed in estate correspondence. Papa, she said, reverting to the childhood endearment she rarely used now, may I have a word with you? The Earl set aside his papers, giving her his full attention. Of course, my dear. You seem troubled. Catherine took a deep breath and recounted Edmund's explanation, watching her father's expression shift from skepticism to concern, then to grudging understanding. When she finished, the Earl remained silent for a long moment. "It is a remarkable tale," he said at last. "And yet I find I am inclined to believe it. Silvermere has always been a man of honor, his recent behavior notwithstanding." "He claims to possess supporting evidence," Catherine added. "He will bring it tomorrow when he calls." The Earl raised an eyebrow. "You have agreed to receive him, then, to examine his proof," Catherine clarified. "Nothing more." Her father studied her intently. "And if his proof is convincing, what then, Catherine?" "I do not know," she admitted. "My heart is confused." "And Mr. Howard, he called earlier," Catherine sighed. "He is everything kind and good, but he is not the man you love," the Earl finished gently. Catherine looked up, startled by her father's perception. "I did not say that. You did not need to." The Earl smiled sadly. The following afternoon, Edmund arrived at the Petton townhouse precisely at 3 o'clock, carrying a leather portfolio. Catherine received him in the drawing-room, with Helena present as propriety demanded. "Your Grace," Catherine greeted him formally. "Lady Catherine, Lady Helena." Edmund bowed, then gestured toward the portfolio. "I have brought the documents I mentioned." Helena, sensing the gravity of the moment, stood. "I believe I hear Mrs. Collins calling me, if you will excuse me." Once Helena had departed, though Catherine suspected she lingered just outside the door, Edmund opened the portfolio and spread several papers on the table between them. "These are copies of correspondence between my father and Harrove," he explained, indicating yellowing letters. "Note the dates. This final letter was written 3 days before my father's death." Catherine examined the letter closely. The late Duke's handwriting was firm and decisive, much like Edmund's. But the content was disturbing, clear accusations of financial impropriety and a demand for a meeting. "This certainly suggests a motive," she acknowledged. "But is it sufficient to prove murder?" "Unfortunately not," Edmund admitted. "But these," he produced more recent documents, "are bank records illustrating how Harrove systematically embezzled funds from my family's investments over a period of years. And this," he unfolded a newspaper clipping, "is the announcement of his arrest 3 weeks ago." Catherine read the clipping, which detailed charges of fraud against prominent businessman Victor Harrove, without mentioning any connection to the Duke of Silvermere. "You kept your name out of the papers," she observed. "For as long as possible," Edmund agreed, "though I imagine the connection will emerge during the trial." "And the Duchess, how has she responded to her uncle's arrest?" Edmund's expression hardened slightly with surprising composure. "She claims ignorance of his financial dealings, though she must have benefited from them. Her late husband's fortune was largely managed by Harrove." "Do you believe her?" "I believe she is practiced at protecting herself," Edmund said carefully. "Whether through genuine ignorance or willful blindness, I cannot say for certain." Catherine considered this. "She seemed quite possessive of you at the musicale." A shadow crossed Edmund's face. "I allowed her to believe our connection was deeper than it was, a necessary deception to gain access to Harrove. It was not honorable, but I felt justified in my pursuit of justice." "And now?" Catherine asked. "She clearly believes your arrangement continues." "I have made my position clear to her since Harrove's arrest," Edmund said firmly. "Any pretense of courtship is over." Catherine returned the documents to the portfolio, her mind working rapidly. Everything Edmund had shown her aligned with his explanation, yet one question lingered. "Why did you not contact me once Harrove was safely in custody? Why wait until we encountered each other at Lady Rathel's ball?" Edmund's expression turned rueful. "Fear, plain and simple. I had convinced myself that you must despise me, rightfully so, and that any attempt to rekindle our connection would be unwelcome. When I saw you at the ball, so radiant and seemingly healed from whatever pain I had inflicted, I nearly lost my courage entirely." "But you followed me to the terrace," Catherine reminded him. "I couldn't help myself," Edmund admitted. "Seeing you again, it was like coming home after a long, dark journey." The raw emotion in his voice touched something deep within Catherine's heart, but she maintained her composure. "These documents lend credence to your account," she said carefully. However, trust once broken is not easily mended. I understand, Edmund said solemnly. I ask only for the chance to earn your trust again. Not through mere words, but through tangible actions. Catherine met his gaze steadily. Actions speak louder than words indeed. We shall see what your actions reveal, your grace. Edmund rose to take his leave, recognizing that he had been granted no firm commitment, only the chance to prove himself worthy. At the drawing-room door he paused. I shall see you at Lady Sinclair's dinner this evening. Yes, Catherine confirmed. Helena and I will be attending with father. Until then, Edmund bowed and departed. Helena reappeared almost immediately. Well, was his explanation satisfactory? Catherine sighed. It was plausible and supported by evidence. So, you believe him? I believe he thought he was protecting me, Catherine said carefully. But his method of protection inflicted great pain. Helena sat beside her sister. The question now is whether you can forgive him. Forgiveness is one thing, Catherine replied. Trust is another matter entirely. But you still care for him, Helena observed shrewdly. Catherine closed her eyes briefly. Much as I wish it otherwise. Yes. Later that evening, the Peton carriage delivered Catherine, Helena, and the Earl to Lady Sinclair's elegant townhouse in Mayfair. The dinner was a relatively intimate affair by London standards, with only 20 guests gathered in the opulent dining room. Catherine found herself seated between an elderly viscount and a visiting Italian count, with James Howard directly across from her. Edmund, she noted with a mix of relief and disappointment, was positioned at the far end of the table, next to Lady Sinclair herself. Throughout the meal, Catherine maintained pleasant conversation with her dining companions, though she was acutely aware of Edmund's occasional glances in her direction. James, too, watched her with quiet attentiveness, his expression revealing his continued hope. The situation grew more complicated when the ladies withdrew to the drawing-room, leaving the gentlemen to their port and cigars. The Duchess of Harrington immediately approached Catherine, her smile brittle. Lady Catherine, she said smoothly, such a pleasure to see you again. I understand the Duke called upon you yesterday. Catherine met the Duchess's gaze calmly. Yes, Your Grace. He had some business matters to discuss with my father. How interesting, the Duchess replied, her tone hinting she suspected otherwise. Edmund has been most distracted lately. I fear his judgment may be impaired by sentiment. The Duke strikes me as a man who knows his own mind, Catherine countered. The Duchess leaned closer, lowering her voice. Let me be plain, my dear. Edmund and I have a long-standing arrangement that will culminate in marriage. His recent nostalgia regarding your previous acquaintance changes nothing. Before Catherine could respond, Lady Helena intervened. Duchess, I believe Lady Sinclair is seeking your opinion on the new draperies. She values your exquisite taste. With a final pointed look at Catherine, the Duchess glided away. That woman is a viper, Helena muttered. What did she want to stake her claim? Catherine replied, though I suspect it is a claim based more on wishful thinking than reality. When the gentlemen rejoined the ladies, Edmund made his way directly to Catherine's side. May I fetch you some refreshment? He asked politely. Thank you. No, Catherine replied, conscious of the Duchess's narrowed eyes from across the room. Edmund followed her gaze. Pay her no mind. Elizabeth's pride is wounded, but she will recover. She seems quite convinced of your imminent engagement, Catherine observed. Edmund's expression hardened. Then she labors under a misapprehension I have repeatedly tried to correct. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of James Howard. Lady Catherine, he greeted her warmly. I wonder if I might claim your attention for a moment. Edmund stiffened, but nodded politely to James before withdrawing to speak with Lord Sinclair. You seem troubled, James said once Edmund had moved away. Is there anything I can do? Catherine smiled gratefully at his concern. You are kind as always. But no, this is something I must resolve myself. The Duke's explanation was satisfactory then, James asked, his expression carefully neutral. It was compelling, Catherine admitted. Though trust is not so easily restored. James nodded thoughtfully. I understand, but know that whatever you decide, I value your friendship above all. His sincere goodness made Catherine's heart ache. In a simpler world, she might have loved this man who offered such steady devotion. The evening progressed with music and conversation, but an underlying tension persisted. The Duchess continued to hover near Edmund, making her claim apparent to all observers. Edmund, for his part, maintained a polite distance while seeking opportunities to speak with Catherine. When the Petons prepared to depart, Edmund approached Catherine once more. "May I call on you tomorrow?" he asked quietly. "There is something I wish to discuss." Catherine hesitated, aware of the Duchess watching them intently. "I shall be home at 2 o'clock, she finally agreed. The following day brought gray skies and a persistent drizzle that mirrored Catherine's uncertain mood. She had spent a restless night weighing Edmund's explanation against her lingering hurt, trying to determine if her heart could risk trusting him again. At precisely 2 o'clock, Edmund was announced. He entered the drawing room with an air of determination, his great coat still damp from the rain. "Thank you for seeing me," he said, declining the offer of tea. "You said you had something to discuss?" Catherine prompted when he seemed momentarily at a loss for words. Edmund took a deep breath. "Yes, I have been reflecting on your words about trust being earned through actions, not words. And I realize that I have asked you to forgive a great deal based on an explanation that, while true, came very late." Edmund paced the room, his agitation evident. "You deserve more than explanations, Catherine. You deserve certainty." "What kind of certainty?" she asked cautiously. Edmund stopped pacing and faced her directly. "I am departing for Silvermere Court tomorrow." Catherine blinked in surprise. "Leaving London? But the season will continue without me," he finished. "I have pressing matters at the estate that require my attention, including long overdue improvements to tenant cottages that have suffered neglect during my focus on Harrove." "I see," Catherine said, trying to mask her disappointment. "Then this is farewell." "No," Edmund said quickly. "It is an invitation." Catherine stared at him, bewildered. "I would like you and your family to visit Silvermere Court," Edmund clarified. "As my honored guests, spend a fortnight there, explore the estate, and meet the individuals who depend upon me. Judge me by how I fulfill my responsibilities, not merely by my words exchanged within a London drawing room." The proposition was unexpected, yet undeniably appealing. "You desire for me to observe you upon your own ground," Catherine mused. "I wish for you to perceive me as I truly am," Edmund corrected. "Not merely the London aristocrat or the individual consumed by vengeance, but as the caretaker of an estate that has remained within my family for generations. I believe a man's true character becomes evident in the manner in which he treats those who rely upon him." Catherine weighed his proposal. A sojourn to Silvermere Court would indeed offer insights into Edmund's character that extended far beyond the confines of London society. Moreover, it would distance them both from the Duchess's immediate influence. "I shall confer with my father," she said at length. "Should he provide his approval, we would be most honored to accept your kind invitation." Relief washed across Edmund's face. "Thank you. I shall dispatch formal invitations this evening, complete with details regarding travel arrangements." As he prepared to depart, Catherine posed one final question. "And the Duchess? What will she make of your abrupt departure?" Edmund's expression was resolute. "Elizabeth's expectations are not my concern. My present focus lies solely upon proving myself worthy of your trust, Catherine. Everything else is of secondary importance." Following a discussion with her father, who approved of the visit with certain provisos concerning propriety, Catherine found herself confronting a new dilemma: how to apprise James Howard of their impending departure. The opportunity arose the next morning when James called at the Peton townhouse. "You are leaving London?" he asked, his disappointment palpable when Catherine explained their plans. "Only for a fortnight," she assured him. "Father believes the country air will greatly benefit Helena, who has been somewhat pale of late." James was too astute to be easily fooled. And the Duke's estate just happens to be your chosen destination. Catherine met his gaze directly. Yes, I need to understand certain matters more clearly. You are granting him another chance then, James stated, not as a question, but as an acknowledgement of reality. I am seeking answers, Catherine clarified. Whether those answers lead to reconciliation or final closure remains to be seen. James nodded thoughtfully. I respect your candor, Lady Catherine. Few would be so forthright. You deserve nothing less, she replied sincerely. Your friendship has meant a great deal to me, and I shall remain your friend, regardless of your decision, James promised, though the shadow in his eyes belied the personal cost of that promise. As James took his leave, Catherine was struck by the contrast between the two men who sought her affections. One who had inflicted profound pain, but whose explanation, if genuine, hinted at a love so profound he would willingly sacrifice his own happiness for her well-being. And the other who offered unwavering, uncomplicated devotion. Why then did her heart still lean towards Edmund, despite the hurt he had caused? 3 days later, the Pembertons' traveling carriage departed London, bound for Silvermere Court in Derbyshire. Catherine watched the city recede, keenly aware that she was embarking on a journey towards a decision that would irrevocably shape her future. Silvermere Court rose majestically against the backdrop of the rolling Derbyshire hills, its pale stone walls radiating warmth in the late afternoon sun. As the Petons' carriage approached the imposing estate, Catherine felt a surge of nervous anticipation. This was Edmund's ancestral home, the seat of his responsibilities, and the truest measure of the man he had become. Gracious, Helena breathed, leaning forward to gain a better view. It is magnificent. The Earl nodded appreciatively. One of the finest estates in the county, by all accounts. Edmund himself greeted them in the grand entrance hall, attired not in the formal garments of London society, but in the practical clothing of a country gentleman. His face lit up at the sight of Catherine, though he maintained a respectful distance as he welcomed them. Lord Wilmington, Lady Catherine, Lady Helena, welcome to Silvermere Court. I trust your journey was comfortable. Quite satisfactory, thank you, the Earl replied. A fine property you have here, Silvermere. Thank you, sir. It has remained within my family for 15 generations. Edmund's pride was evident, not in arrogance, but in his clear sense of duty. I trust you will allow me to share some of its highlights during your stay. The housekeeper, Mrs. Hodges, a dignified woman in her 50s, stepped forward to escort them to their rooms. Everything has been prepared according to His Grace's instructions. If you require anything at all, please do not hesitate to ask. As Catherine followed Mrs. Hodges up the grand staircase, she briefly met Edmund's gaze. The intensity of his expression, hopeful, anxious, and determined, served as a potent reminder of why she had accepted this. Have you ever felt that pull, that unseen thread drawing you towards a truth you couldn't quite grasp? She had, arriving at Silvermere Court not just as a guest, but as a seeker, a detective of the heart. The estate unfolded around her, a tapestry of manicured gardens and a lake that shimmered like a whispered secret. Every corner held a promise, every shadow a question. My lady, a gentle voice, Mrs. Hodges, her lady's maid, had murmured. These chambers offer the finest view, second only to the Duke's own. But what was the view truly showing her? 3 weeks, she learned, had been enough for the Duke to transform the estate. A whirlwind of dawn meetings and overseeing improvements. A true master awakened. Could this flurry of activity reveal the core of the man beneath? 30 years Mrs. Hodges shared with a quiet pride. She had served at Silvermere, witnessing the good heart of the late Duke, now seemingly reborn in his son, yet touched with a more ardent spirit. Dinner that evening was a delicate dance of conversation, led by the Duke's effortless charm, weaving tales of the estate and its history. But Catherine watched, not just listened. Relaxed, yet focused, he seemed rooted in the land, genuinely caring for its well-being. The next morning, a shared ride across the vast acres offered another glimpse. The Duke, pointing out the new school, a beacon of opportunity for the tenants' children. An educated workforce benefits everyone, he declared, his words echoing a progressive vision. Cottages with new windows, roofs being repaired, each improvement a testament to his commitment. Mr. Thornton, the steward, greeted them, his respect mirroring the affection of the tenants they encountered. "You seem well loved by your people," she observed, and a surprised look flickered across his face. "I simply try to fulfill my obligations," he responded, echoing his father's wisdom that nobility lay not in title, but in service. Days unfolded, revealing deeper truths. Hours spent with his steward, caring for a sick tenant, patiently explaining estate accounts. Slowly, the man she had begun to love a year ago, before his sudden vanishing, was resurfacing. One afternoon, she found herself alone in the library, surrounded by silent stories when he appeared. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." His hesitation was a subtle melody. "Not at all," she replied, her gaze drawn to the collection. A legacy of his mother, a woman who cherished knowledge. "She sounds like a remarkable woman," Catherine commented, and the Duke's expression softened with memory. "I think she would have liked you very much, Catherine." The use of her name, a casual intimacy, hung in the air. He paused, then asked, "Would you care to walk with me this afternoon? There's a particular spot by the lake I thought you might enjoy." A shift in their relationship, a delicate invitation. A week at Silvermere had weakened her resistance. This Edmund was the man she had known, thoughtful, honorable, not the cold stranger who had shattered her heart. The lakeshore was bathed in dappled sunlight, a gentle breeze whispering through the leaves. "This was my favorite place as a boy," he confessed, leading her to a sheltered cove beneath an ancient oak. "I would come here to escape." Catherine smiled, imagining him as a young boy. "I had a similar retreat," she responded. "We were not so different then," he observed. They sat in comfortable silence, the lake mirroring their unspoken thoughts. He turned, his gaze direct. "Catherine, has your time at Silvermere changed your perspective at all?" She hesitated. "I've seen much to admire. Your dedication, your concern, your sense of responsibility." Encouragement warmed his expression. "And as to the other matter," she continued, "yes, I believe your explanation about Victor Harrove, your desire to protect me." Relief washed over his face, but she raised a hand. "However," she continued, "I still believe you should have trusted me with the truth." "You're right," he responded immediately. "It was arrogance on my part." His humility was a balm. "What would you have us be to each other now, Edmund?" she asked softly. Taking her hand, he spoke with quiet intensity. "Everything we might have been before. Friends, companions, confidants, and eventually, if you can find it in your heart to fully trust me again, husband and wife." His declaration took her breath away. "Edmund, I am not proposing this moment," he clarified quickly. "I am merely telling you what I hope for, what I will work toward earning, if you'll allow me the chance." She looked at their joined hands, then back to his earnest face. "I think I would like to allow you that chance." The joy that transformed his expression was almost painful, a vivid echo of their early days. "That is all I ask," he said fervently. "Time to prove myself worthy of your trust again." As they walked back, Catherine reflected on their journey. Trust, once broken, was difficult but not impossible when the foundation remained strong. The following days deepened their comfort. Rides through the estate, evenings filled with music and chess. During one such evening, she glanced up to find him watching her with such tenderness. Her fingers faltered on the keys. A messenger arrived with letters, shattering their peace. London society, it seemed, had noticed their absence and spun its own tales. "This is mortifying," Catherine murmured, reading of the rumors. But the Earl was more concerned by Edmund's letter. Victor Harrove's trial had begun with complications. He was making accusations, claiming that Edmund had fabricated evidence, and the Duchess was involved. "Elizabeth is involved." Catherine felt a chill of apprehension. "She may be preparing to testify on her uncle's behalf," Edmund confirmed. Their peaceful interlude must end. They must return to London. When must you leave? Catherine asked. Tomorrow, Edmund replied. I would be honored if you would all return with me. Thus it was decided. Trunks were packed, and they departed Silvermere Court. As they traveled, Catherine reflected on her transformed heart. Caution remained, but hope had blossomed alongside it. Back in London, society descended upon them, seeking confirmation of the rumors. Is it true that the Duke proposed at Silvermere? Lady Worthington asked, her curiosity insatiable. Catherine offered a diplomatic reply, but speculation continued. Invitations poured in, each one a stage for a potential announcement. The Duchess of Harrington had returned, making her presence felt. She's telling everyone that you took advantage of her absence, Helena reported. Meanwhile, Edmund was consumed by the trial. Elizabeth testified today, he reported grimly. She portrayed her uncle as a victim of my obsessive vendetta. Catherine asked, and what of the suspicions regarding your father's death? A shadow crossed his face. The evidence there is circumstantial. As the trial progressed, society remained fixated on the triangle. Rumors flourished, but Catherine remained dignified. She and Edmund had reached a private understanding, nothing formalized. The situation reached its climax at the Countess of Harrow's midsummer ball. Catherine, radiant in emerald silk, entered the ballroom, where the Duchess of Harrington awaited, resplendent in crimson. Lady Catherine, the Duchess greeted her, her smile icy. How delightful to see you again. I trust your country holiday was restorative. Quite refreshing, thank you, Catherine replied evenly. Silvermere Court is a magnificent estate. Yes, I recall it well from my previous visits, the Duchess said, the implication clear. Edmund was most attentive in showing me its particular charms. Before Catherine could respond, Edmund entered the ballroom, his gaze immediately drawn to Catherine. If you'll excuse me, Catherine said politely. As she moved away, she felt the Duchess's gaze boring into her back. Edmund reached her side. Lady Catherine, you look beautiful tonight. Thank you, Your Grace. Their conversation was interrupted by James Howard. A waltz began. Lady Catherine, would you honor me with this dance? Aware of the many eyes, Catherine placed her hand in Edmund's. As they danced, Catherine felt cocooned in the music. You've been avoiding me these past few days, Edmund said quietly. Not avoiding, Catherine corrected. Merely giving you space to focus on the trial. His gaze was intense. Nothing is more important to me than setting things right between us, Catherine. And the Duchess? She seems quite determined to stake her claim. Elizabeth has no claim, Edmund said firmly. As the dance ended, Edmund retained her hand. Catherine, there is something I must ask you. But they were interrupted by the Duchess, who placed a possessive hand on his arm. Edmund, darling, you promised me this next dance, remember? With a slight bow to Catherine, he reluctantly allowed the Duchess to lead him back to the dance floor. Catherine made her way to her father. Catherine, my dear, I was just discussing with Lord Winchester the possibility of extending our stay in London through August. Plans can change, her father replied meaningfully, his gaze shifting to Edmund and the Duchess. I defer to your judgment, father, she said diplomatically. Later, James Howard approached them. Lady Helena, might I borrow your sister for a brief promenade around the room, he asked. Have you ever wondered if love can truly conquer all, even betrayal and years of separation? Catherine walked slowly along the perimeter of the ballroom, a sense of tranquility settling over her. Was she happier than when she had left for Derbyshire? She glanced at Edmund's friend, Mr. James Howard, touched by his genuine concern despite his own unspoken feelings. I am more at peace, she admitted, a healing balm to her own heart. Perhaps the Duke has made amends then. We have reached a better understanding, Catherine acknowledged, though much remained unresolved between them. James nodded thoughtfully. And the Duchess? She appears determined to cause difficulty. Yes, Catherine sighed, though Edmund insists there is nothing between them. For what it's worth, James said after a moment. I believe him. I've observed them together this evening. She pursues, he retreats. It's quite obvious to anyone paying attention. Catherine was surprised by this unexpected support. That's perceptive of you, James. He smiled ruefully. I may be biased in your favor, Lady Catherine, but I am not blind. The Duke looks at you the way— He paused, then continued quietly. The way I imagine I look at you, with admiration, respect, and profound attachment. The honest admission touched Catherine deeply. James, Please, he interrupted gently. No explanations are needed. I told you before that your friendship matters to me above all. That remains true. Catherine impulsively squeezed his hand. You are a good man, James Howard. I am fortunate to know you. As they completed their circuit of the room, they encountered Edmund, who had finally extricated himself from the Duchess's company. His expression was carefully neutral as he observed their joined hands, though Catherine quickly released her hold on James. Your Grace, James greeted him cordially. I was just returning Lady Catherine to her sister's side. Mr. Howard? Edmund acknowledged, his gaze shifting between them. Might I have a word with Lady Catherine afterward? Of course, James replied, bowing slightly to Catherine before departing with impeccable grace. Once they were relatively private, Edmund spoke quietly but intently. I apologize for the interruption earlier. The Duchess can be persistent. So, I've observed, Catherine replied, unable to keep a hint of dryness from her tone. Edmund's expression softened. Catherine, what I was trying to ask before. Not here, she interrupted gently, aware of the curious glances directed their way. Too many eyes, too many ears. Edmund nodded in understanding. Tomorrow, then, would you walk with me in the park? Early, before the fashionable hour, Catherine considered the request. A morning walk would afford them privacy while remaining proper with the presence of other early visitors and gardeners. Yes, she agreed. At 9. 9 it is, Edmund confirmed, relief evident in his features. Until tomorrow, then. The following morning dawned bright and clear. Catherine dressed with particular care in a walking dress of pale blue muslin, simple yet elegant. Helena helped arrange her hair, a knowing smile playing about her lips. You think he means to propose today, don't you? She asked as she secured a final pin. I think he means to speak privately, Catherine corrected, though a flutter of anticipation stirred in her chest. What will be said remains to be seen. Helena's expression grew serious. And if he does propose, what will you answer? Catherine met her sister's gaze in the mirror. I don't know, Helena. My heart says one thing, my caution another. For what it's worth, Helena said thoughtfully, I believe he truly loves you. The way he looks at you, it's as if the sun rises and sets with you alone. Touched by her sister's romantic observation, Catherine smiled. When did my practical little sister become such a poet? Perhaps I've been reading too many novels. Helena laughed, adjusting a curl at Catherine's temple. There, you look perfect. Edmund was waiting when Catherine arrived at the park, his tall figure instantly recognizable even at a distance. As she approached, she noted that he seemed unusually tense, his posture rigid and his expression preoccupied. Good morning, she greeted him. Is something wrong? You seem troubled, Catherine. He took her hands, propriety momentarily forgotten in his agitation. I've just come from my solicitor. The jury has reached a verdict in Herove's case. So quickly, Catherine was surprised. What was the outcome? Guilty on all charges of fraud and embezzlement, Edmund replied, satisfaction evident in his tone. He's to be imprisoned for 15 years. That's wonderful news, Catherine said warmly. You must be relieved. I am, Edmund agreed. But there's more. During final testimony yesterday, new evidence emerged. Evidence I wasn't aware of until this morning regarding your father's death. Catherine guessed, noting the mixture of emotions playing across Edmund's features. Yes. Edmund guided her to a secluded bench beneath a spreading elm tree. One of Herove's former clerks came forward. He testified that Harrove had paid a groom to tamper with my father's saddle before his fatal ride. Catherine gasped. So it truly was murder, not an accident. Not precisely murder in the legal sense. The clerk couldn't prove Harrove intended death rather than injury, but certainly criminal interference that resulted in death. Edmund's voice was tight with controlled emotion. The groom in question died years ago, so his testimony is lost, but the clerk's evidence was enough to add a charge of criminal negligence causing death to Harrove's sentence. Oh, Edmund, Catherine squeezed his hands. I'm so sorry about your father, but grateful that justice has finally been served. Edmund nodded, his expression clearing slightly. It feels like the conclusion of a chapter that's been unfinished for too long. My father can rest easier now and he paused, meeting her gaze directly. I can look to the future instead of the past. The significance of his words hung in the air between them. Catherine felt her heart quicken as Edmund shifted to face her more directly. Catherine, when I began investigating Harrove, I allowed that pursuit to overshadow everything else in my life, including what was most precious to me. His voice deepened with emotion. I convinced myself I was protecting you by pushing you away. But in truth, I was protecting myself from the terror of loving someone so completely that losing them would destroy me. Edmund. Catherine began, but he gently placed a finger to her lips. Please let me finish. I need to say this properly. He took a deep breath. These past weeks, seeing you again, explaining myself, spending time together at Silvermere, have shown me what truly matters. Justice for my father was important, yes, but not at the cost of happiness, of connection, of love. He released her hands only to reach into his coat and withdraw a small velvet box. Catherine's breath caught as he opened it to reveal a ring of exceptional beauty, a central sapphire surrounded by diamonds set in platinum. This was my grandmother's, Edmund explained softly. It has been passed down through generations of Silvermere duchesses. I can think of no one more worthy to wear it than you. With perfect grace he slid from the bench to one knee before her, heedless of the dew-dampened grass. Catherine Elizabeth Petton, I have loved you from the moment I first saw you, though I was too tongue-tied to speak. I have loved you through our separation, though I foolishly believed distance would diminish the feeling. I will love you for all the days of my life, if you will do me the profound honor of becoming my wife. Tears shimmered in Catherine's eyes as she looked down at Edmund, this proud, complicated man who had hurt her deeply and then worked tirelessly to make amends. In his face, she saw not only love and hope, but also vulnerability and the fear of rejection. Before I answer, she said gently, I need to know one thing. If faced with similar circumstances again, a threat, a danger, a difficult choice, would you make decisions that affect us both alone? Or would you trust me to stand beside you? Edmund's gaze never wavered. I would trust you with everything. My fears, my doubts, my vulnerabilities. I have learned that true protection comes not from pushing away those we love, but from standing together against whatever challenges arise. His answer, so honest and complete, dissolved the last of Catherine's reservations. Then yes, Edmund Ashford, I will marry you, not because you are a duke, or because society expects it, but because I love you, the man you truly are beneath the title. Joy transformed Edmund's features as he slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to sit beside her once more. With tender reverence, he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, a kiss that spoke of promises kept and a future shared. When they finally parted, Catherine smiled through happy tears. We should return. Father will be waiting for your formal request. Edmund nodded, helping her to her feet. And after that, I thought perhaps we might announce our engagement at Lady Winchester's dinner tomorrow evening. That seems fitting, Catherine agreed. Though I imagine the Duchess will not take the news well. Edmund's expression turned serious. Elizabeth has already departed London. My solicitor informed me this morning that she left for her country estate immediately after hearing the verdict in her uncle's case. I suspect we've seen the last of her in society circles for some time. Relief washed over Catherine. While she had never truly doubted Edmund's feelings, the Duchess's persistent presence had been a shadow over their renewed connection. As they walked back through the park, arm in arm, Catherine reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. A year ago, heartbroken and bewildered by Edmund's abandonment, she could never have imagined that they would find their way back to each other, that explanation, understanding, and forgiveness would heal what had been broken. Yet here they were, bound not only by love, but by a deeper appreciation for what that love entailed. Trust, honesty, partnership in all things. The Earl received their news with evident satisfaction, granting his blessing immediately. "I've watched you these past weeks, Silvermere," he said as Edmund made his formal request. "You've proven yourself a man of principle and integrity, despite past mistakes. I entrust my daughter's happiness to you gladly." Helena, upon hearing the news, embraced her sister with unrestrained joy. "I knew it. From the moment he looked at you at Lady Ruthwell's ball, I knew this day would come." The announcement at Lady Winchester's dinner the following evening created precisely the sensation they had anticipated. Congratulations poured in, along with knowing smiles from those who claimed to have suspected all along that a reconciliation was imminent. James Howard approached the newly engaged couple with genuine goodwill, though Catherine detected a hint of sadness behind his smile. "I wish you both every happiness," he said sincerely. "You deserve it, Lady Catherine." "Thank you, James," she replied warmly. "Your friendship means a great deal to us both." In the weeks that followed, preparations for the wedding consumed much of Catherine's time. Edmund suggested a ceremony at Silvermere Court's ancient chapel, followed by celebrations that would include not only London society, but the estate tenants and villagers as well. "I want everyone who depends on Silvermere to share in our happiness," he explained, "and to meet their future Duchess." Catherine was touched by his inclusivity. "That sounds perfect. A true beginning to our life together." On a golden autumn day in October, exactly 1 year and 4 months after Edmund had first disappeared from Catherine's life, they stood together before the altar of Silvermere Chapel. Catherine wore a gown of ivory silk with delicate lace that had belonged to her mother, while Edmund cut a striking figure in formal attire. As they spoke their vows, promises of love, fidelity, and partnership, Catherine felt the last vestiges of past hurt dissolve, replaced by the certainty that what had once been broken had been remade stronger than before. "I, Edmund James Ashford, take thee, Catherine Elizabeth Petton, to be my wedded wife." Edmund's voice was steady and clear, his gaze never leaving hers. "To have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death us do part." When Catherine repeated her vows, her voice rang with equal conviction. This was no fairy tale ending, but the beginning of a partnership founded on mutual respect, understanding, and a love tempered by challenge and adversity. After the ceremony, as they greeted well-wishers in the great hall of Silvermere Court, Edmund leaned close to whisper in her ear. "Are you happy, Your Grace?" he asked, using her new title with evident pleasure. Catherine smiled up at him, her heart full. "Completely, though I suspect our greatest happiness still lies ahead." "Indeed," Edmund agreed, his eyes alight with love and promise. "We have a lifetime to discover it together." Later, as twilight softened the Derbyshire landscape, the Duke and Duchess of Silvermere slipped away from the celebrations to stand together on the terrace overlooking the lake that had witnessed their reconciliation months earlier. "When I saw you again that night at Lady Ruthwell's ball," Edmund mused, his arm around Catherine's waist, "I never dared hope we would end here." "Nor I," Catherine admitted. "But perhaps we needed that time apart, that pain, to truly understand what we mean to each other." Edmund turned to face her fully, framing her face with gentle hands. "I will spend every day of our lives ensuring you never regret giving me a second chance." "And I," Catherine replied, "will ensure you never feel you must face any challenge alone again." As they sealed this promise with a kiss, the first stars appeared above Silvermere Court, witnesses to a love that had overcome betrayal, separation, and doubt to emerge stronger and more enduring than before. 5 years later, the nursery at Silvermere Court was awash in morning sunlight as Catherine entered to find her husband cradling their infant son, James Henry Ashford, while their 3-year-old daughter, Eleanor, solemnly presented her father with a wooden horse. "It's for baby James," she explained with the grave importance only a child can muster. so he can practice for when he's big enough to ride Peppa. Edmund accepted the offering with equal seriousness. A thoughtful gift, Eleanor. Your brother will treasure it when he's older. Catherine smiled from the doorway, her heart full at the sight of her family. The past 5 years had brought challenges certainly. The management of a vast estate, the expectations placed upon a duchess, the delicate balance of public duties and private life. But through it all, she and Edmund had maintained the partnership they had promised each other on their wedding day. "Good morning," she said, moving into the room to kiss Eleanor's forehead and stroke James's downy head. "I see the nursery is already quite busy." Papa was telling stories, Eleanor informed her importantly, about when you and he didn't like each other and then did again. Catherine raised an eyebrow at Edmund, who had the grace to look slightly abashed. "A highly edited version," he assured her. "Appropriate for young ears." "I should hope so," Catherine laughed, lifting James from his father's arms. The unabridged tale might give her rather dramatic ideas about romance. "I like the part where Papa had to say sorry lots of times," Eleanor declared, climbing onto her father's lap. "And you made him wait and wait before you said yes. Wise woman, your mother," Edmund told his daughter, his eyes meeting Catherine's over Eleanor's head with a warmth that still made her heart skip. Later that afternoon, as they walked together through the improved village that now boasted not only a school but a small hospital and a library, all funded by the Duke and Duchess's modernization efforts, Catherine reflected on the journey that had brought them here. "I received a letter from Helena today," she told Edmund as they strolled arm in arm. "She and Lord Weston have set a date for their wedding at last, June next year." "Excellent news," Edmund replied, "though I'm surprised it took him so long to persuade her." Catherine smiled, remembering her sister's determination to ensure her suitor's character was thoroughly proven before accepting his proposal. "Helena learned from my experience. I think she wanted certainty. And has she found it?" "She believes so," Catherine said thoughtfully. "Though, as we know, certainty in matters of the heart is never absolute. There is always an element of faith involved." Edmund squeezed her hand where it rested on his arm. "Faith well placed in your case, I hope." "The best decision I ever made," Catherine assured him. Despite the rather dramatic beginning, they paused at the village green, where children played under the watchful eyes of mothers and nursemaids. Among them was a familiar face, Mrs. Jenkins, whose cottage had been among the first Edmund had improved when they visited Silvermere together 5 years earlier. "Your Grace." The woman greeted them warmly, curtsying. "We were just saying what a blessing the new Dr. Parker has been. My Tommy's cough is much improved since he prescribed that syrup." "I'm delighted to hear it," Catherine replied sincerely. "Dr. Parker came highly recommended from London. The Duke was most insistent that Silvermere should have the very best medical care available, and we're grateful for it, Your Grace," Mrs. Jenkins said, her weathered face creasing in a smile. "As we are for all the changes these past years." As they continued their walk, Edmund remarked, "I sometimes wonder what my father would make of all this. The school, the hospital, the modern farming methods. I think he would be proud," Catherine said gently. "You've honored his memory not just by bringing his betrayer to justice, but by building something meaningful with the legacy he left you." Edmund nodded, his expression thoughtful. "And none of it would have been possible without you. Your vision for what Silvermere could become has transformed not just the estate but me as well." Catherine smiled up at him. "We transformed each other. I think that's what partnership means." As they crested the hill overlooking the lake and the grand house beyond it, Edmund stopped, turning to face her fully. "Do you ever think about that day at Lady Rothwell's ball?" he asked, when our eyes met across the room and everything else seemed to fade away. "Often," Catherine admitted. "It was a turning point, though I didn't recognize it then. I knew in that moment that I had made the greatest mistake of my life in leaving you," Edmund said quietly, "and that I would do whatever was necessary to earn a second chance." Catherine reached up to touch his cheek, her heart full of the love that had deepened and matured through years of shared joys, challenges, and growth. "Some would say we were fortunate," she mused, "that few who are parted as we were find their way back to each other." "Not fortune," Edmund corrected her gently. Choice. Every day we choose each other anew. That's the true meaning of till death us do part. Not a single vow made once, but a promise renewed with each sunrise. As the afternoon light gilded Silvermere Court in the distance, the Duke and Duchess stood together on the hillside, their shared past behind them, their future stretching out before them. A future built on honesty, trust, and a love that had been tested by fire and emerged stronger for the trial. I choose you today, Catherine said softly, echoing the private renewal they had made a tradition on each anniversary. And all the days to come. And I choose you, Edmund replied, drawing her close. Today and always. Together they turned toward home where their children awaited, secure in the knowledge that whatever challenges the future might hold, they would face them as they had faced all others. Side by side, hand in hand, hearts aligned in perfect understanding. The end. Dear listeners, we hope you've enjoyed another unforgettable story. If, by the end of this journey, your heart feels lighter, your soul more at peace, and your spirit gently uplifted, then we've done our job well. Every tale we share is lovingly crafted to offer you not just romance, but also a moment of rest, reflection, and hope. We always aim to contribute something positive through our stories, and we're so grateful to have you with us. Thank you for being here until our next story. With all our gratitude, the Legends of the Fall team. Thank you, dearest listeners, for staying with us until the very end. We hope this story brought you a sense of peace, romance, and emotional renewal. From the depths of our hearts, thank you for your support. Every like, comment, and subscription inspires us to keep telling more stories of love, redemption, and second chances. If this tale moved you, please consider sharing it with someone who needs a moment of warmth and hope today. And don't go just yet. At the end of this video, you'll find a new story recommendation waiting for you. Click it and let yourself be swept away once more with love and gratitude. The Legends of the Fall team.